Shalom, I'm Rabbi Gail Schuster-Buskila, and today we are tackling one of the most important parashot in the entire year, Parashat Yitro, when the Decalogue, the Ten Commandments, is supposed to have been revealed to Moses on Mount Sinai. There can't be a more seminal event in the life of any people when they have received divine direction, really divine direction for this will be for out millennia. This is something that eventually becomes universal across the world in so many religions in so many places. And yet I'm going to jump into this by saying again, I find this to be a metaphorical, not a literal account of what could happen. For those of you like me who grew up in the 20th century, we are used to all sorts of things coming to light. And one of the things, this is no longer a current book about archaeology and the Bible, but there's so many things, especially after what was found in Qumran, that we are used to seeing all over the place. We have a special place in the Israel Museum. There are plenty of places that display the pieces of the Dead Sea Scrolls. But we don't really ever find any evidence of the original tablets, if they were tablets, even though they were supposed to be stone. Okay, the original ones obviously were broken by Moses, and the second set were the ones that were supposed to have been carried through the desert by the children of Israel in the Ark of the Covenant. Never found any evidence of that, and I don't think we ever will. But that doesn't mean that we don't have some light of understanding that has come through the millennia and that we are still carrying with us. So let's jump right into the subject of the Decalogue. I have given the title for this week's video, Divine Nebulocity. And when we get into the Midrash itself, and of course from the parasha, I hope you can understand my title. Nebula, of course, look like the Orion Nebula that you see from the picture from the Hubble on this slide. But there is a connection, and I believe a great connection between the words in the Bible, which, of course, are like the light that we get from those stars. This isn't the light from today. These stars that we see, they may have been lit, this light, thousands, if not, I don't know how many light years before. And that's it. We're not seeing the origin. We're seeing the result. And that is very close to what we get with the Ten Commandments. I positioned these words by Mordechai Kaplan across from this picture of this amazing Orion Nebula, where stars are born, and we are seeing the light that was emitted we don't know how long ago. And his words, I think, have an important message. The Decalogue sets forth the goals to be achieved through the education of the conscience, although belief in their divine revelation no longer motivates man, and I would say humans, to unquestioning obedience. The Ten Commandments are no less authentic. This was written in 1970. In 1970, he was already saying that we don't believe, many of us don't believe in revelation. And here we see that there are values that continue to be important. Now, this is an amazing fragment from the Ten Commandments. It was actually found somewhere in Egypt. It was found before the Dead Sea Scrolls were found, but it is a fragment of the Ten Commandments, and it was found at the beginning of the 20th century. This is writing that we can read. We know that this is the Ten Commandments, and it just amazes me that from about 150 to 100 BCE, before the Common Era, this was found. It survived, and of course we can read it to this day. The next fragment is from the Dead Sea Scrolls. It even has a number. It was found in 1952 in cave number 4 in the Dead Sea in the Qumran caves. And again, the scroll dates to the 1st century BCE, written in Hebrew, and it's beautiful writing. And of course, we still can read it to this day. The words are there. They're like the light. We don't know who wrote them. They're like the light from the stars in the sky. And we are getting their message now. Melskalt reports these words from Mordechai Kaplan. We thus cannot ignore Sinai, but rather need to reinterpret this event so it will continue to function for us. Sinai teaches us that fundamental moral truths are in some way part of the fabric of the universe, and that at the root of the Jewish beliefs is the conviction that morality, justice, and mercy are therefore divine, in a poetic and metaphorical sense, although never literal sense. These qualities endure as the Word of God. Of course, we are now at my website, Midrash.Harabah, and we are going to look at the Midrash, or a few lines of the Midrash that I wrote about this wonderful parasha, and I entitled the Midrash itself as Perceiving Godliness. If you've seen me talk about God before, then you will know that I have a little star here because of the fact that the exact words that I read to you before, which I have copied here in a poetic and metaphorical, though never literal sense, these ideas endure as godliness. I have a link here to the page where I have put some interesting ideas about theology, and I highly recommend reading these. The one that I quoted before is right here from Melskalt. But there are many, many other people that are quoted, and especially this wonderful lecture by Professor Shaya Cohen about the image of God and the name of God in these texts. I will not be reading all of this parasha. I always recommend Sepharia, where the Hebrew and the English are put one next to the other. But I think that it is fascinating to read what happens here in this parasha, in this portion. I'll begin with my reading a few lines from chapter 19 of Exodus, verses 16 through 18. On the 3rd day in the morning, there were thunder and lightning, and a heavy cloud was on the mountain, and the sound of the ram's horn was extremely loud, and all the people who were in the camp were trembling. Moses brought the people out of the camp towards God. They stood at the foot of the mountain. Mount Sinai was totally covered in smoke, since Yahweh descended on it in fire like a kiln. The entire mountain trembled intensely. And then a few lines from my Midrash. The universe dances before us. in mystery and in sound. Could an enormous electric storm of blazing lights and furious sound have moved and bent everything in its path? Could hills and mountains blaze, then be engulfed by waves of rolling clouds? Wouldn't the sounds overwhelm the people? At the end of my Midrash, and I really hope that you take a look at it, read the whole Midrash, the link will be below this video, is a link to Carl Sagan's discussion of the Orion Nebula. I find it to be extremely inspiring, no less inspiring than the words in the Ten Commandments, but in, of course, a different way. Yes, divine nebulosity, the light of ideas from and moral values from the Ten Commandments from so long ago, just like the light from these stars from so long ago. Things that we see and we cherish and that we learn from them all the time. I hope you enjoyed my introduction to the fifth Torah portion in the book of Exodus, Parashat Yitro, Parasha of the Ten Commandments, Aseret HaDibrot, the Decalogue. Parashat Yitro, Shabbat Shalom.